I'm writing a vision and making it plain. Don't think it's a game, and some of it just might be hard to obtain. I know it, but I don't care, cause I know deep in my brain I'm destined for greatness, and I would not get it if I keep on playing. So let me go get.
Have you ever had a feeling that eventually somebody was going to find out? Like, eventually people would know you don't know what you're doing. People you follow on social media, people that you do business with, people that may support your business, like eventually they were going to figure out that you didn't know. You was just kind of faking it till you made it. Well, it's actually a name for that. It's called imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome, according to Dr. Google, is a feeling of inadequacy that persists despite evidence of success. Imposters suffer from chronic self-doubt and a sense of intellectual fraudulence that override any feelings of success or external proof of their competence. So basically, imposter syndrome is when you feel like you don't belong, but you actually have created the space. Like you are actually where you're supposed to be. So honestly, this is something that I've actually struggled with in life. I've always been a really driven person. I've always been someone that had goals and aspirations, things that I wanted to pursue, because I've always been a self-starter. I've always, accomplished the goals that I set for myself educationally, within my career, within raising my children, financially. I mean, not to like toot my own horn, but I look pretty good on paper. Like I accomplished a lot of things that I set out to do. Like I'm very goal oriented. But that being said, many times I've had this feeling that eventually whoever they is, they were going to find out I really didn't belong here. And, like I said earlier, the saying, like, fake it till you make it. Well, in my head, I was still trying to tell myself that I hadn't made it. I was telling myself that eventually I was going to make it, when in actuality, I had surpassed many of the things that it was. But it didn't take, I hadn't accepted it internally. So I was still trying to get there. And I remember actually having a conversation with a coworker about this very thing. I had recently received a promotion at work, and it was well deserved. It was definitely overdue. But this new position was actually a created position in my department. Nobody had held it in the past. Like it was something that they had created specifically for me. Naturally, I felt like a fish out of water, because while I had worked to get to this point, I had to create this whole position. And I wasn't really sure how to do that. I really wasn't, at that point, I was kind of, like I said, a fish out of water. Now, the fact that the position was actually given to me, the fact that they trusted me enough to create my own space within the organization, for me, it wasn't enough to convince me that I had actually belonged here. And I had a few conversations with this coworker, how basically eventually they was going to figure out I didn't know what I was talking about. And eventually, something would happen and the bottom would fall out, and I would be discovered, if you will. So the thing is, she had actually had very similar feelings. She had been working at the company at this time, I think 11 years. And I was on year 5. And she was she had felt the same way. And, in our conversation, she stated that her mother, who at the time was retired and had had a very successful career as a psychologist, she also had expressed that she had the same feelings. And talking to other successful people, they also had very similar feelings. So I asked myself, why? Why is it that so many people feel this way? And honestly, most of the people that I come across that feel this way, they're women. I don't know if most men just don't talk about this type of thing or if they really just don't have these type of feelings. But the people I've heard that really feel this way are women. And they are like all successful women. These ain't like women that ain't doing nothing. These are women that have had success in their careers and their life. Like they are like doing it, but they all have this feeling of imposter. They all have this imposter syndrome. So ultimately, these feelings, they derive from self-doubt, like a feeling of inadequacy in some type of area that, they could come from multiple areas in your life's journey. Like it's not necessarily one specific thing that pinpoints that this syndrome would develop, but it happens. And so for the longest amount of time, for me, I tend to dim my light and allow other people to shine, or even like not just so I either allow them to shine or so that I wouldn't necessarily outshine other people. And it can be family, it can be friends, and all type of relationships in between. But, if you listen to episode 1, you heard me mention that back in 2016 that I had kind of this like little lapse in judgment in this relationship that I decided was a good idea that was not. So at that time, I had become, before this particular situation started, I had become accustomed to not really talking about my accomplishments. So if somebody didn't ask certain things, then I just didn't say anything. Like anything, it could be anything from, people would just assume whatever they wanted to assume, and I would never really correct them. It had to do with education or how much money I made, even like where I worked. Like if people didn't ask, I just didn't say anything. So there was this gathering from my family members, and this particular guy came to the gathering. And at this gathering, it was kind of by tradition that my aunt would kind of give congratulations or accolades to different family members because of their accomplishments. And, it could have been anything from graduating, starting a business, high school, diplomas, degrees, whatever it was, just successes, just acknowledging everybody's successes that they have had over the, however long. There wasn't like a time frame. It wasn't anything that was like in the past year or anything. It was just successes in general, just to kind of congratulate family. So, naturally, I was on the list. I was on the list because of my master's degree. So I have an MBA, and at this point, this particular guy, he didn't know it. He didn't know that I had a master's. I think he assumed I had just a bachelor's or some type of advanced degree, but he didn't really know. Like there was nothing on my office walls or anything like that would like give it away, if you will. But he didn't ask, so I didn't tell him. So he just didn't know. So later on, this guy, we were talking and he brought it up. He brought up the fact that, I had a master's degree, and it was real random how he brought it up. So at that point, like immediately right there, I knew it was going to be a problem. I knew it was going to be an issue for him. So after that, it would come up like in random conversations, arguments, all this stuff. It would always be something, and it was like everybody ain't got a master's degree, or, you master's degree, blah, 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 whatever it was. It would come up. So again, I knew at that first conversation, it wasn't an argument. It was just a conversation, and it was really random, and it came up. I knew right then it was a problem. I knew that it was an insecurity thing for him, but it was sadly in line with a lot of stuff that I had dealt with in the past, not necessarily with men in relationships. It has happened with family. It has happened with friends, who felt like they had not accomplished what I had. It was just something that I had become accustomed to. So after years of avoiding making other people feel uncomfortable with what I had accomplished without me realizing it, I had developed these feelings of self-doubt. I had, as if my accomplishments were not enough. In a way, I looked at it like I was just doing what I was supposed to do. And I kind of do that in everyday life. It's like, kind of brush it off. People will congratulate me and I kind of brush it off like, oh, it's kind of doing what I'm already supposed to be doing, or in my mind, what I'm supposed to be doing. So I didn't count it as anything special. I didn't count it as any type of big accomplishment because, I had reached these, I had set these imaginary levels for myself and I couldn't even tell you what they were. But even as I accomplished certain goals, to me, in my head, I had decided that it was what I was supposed to be doing. So I didn't really see it as worthy of any accolades or, any type of acknowledgement. But the thing is, all of those people who felt any type of negative way about what I had done or what I was doing, all of those people who I had allowed them to project their insecurities onto me for so many years. They had the issue and I in turn internalized their issue and made it my own. So I decided, with no help of anybody else, I decided that I was just not going to make them feel bad. And when it came up in conversations, I just let it ride. Like I didn't want to kind of rock the boat, if you will. I didn't want anybody to really feel bad. But honestly, they had the issue. It never was me that had the real issue. I allowed their issue to become mine, but it actually really wasn't anything that I had. So I'm the type of person who I want everybody in my circle to win. Like, not even in my circle. I legit feel like it's enough out here for everybody. Everybody can have a piece of the pie. Like, I support people in whatever it is that they do, even if the support isn't necessarily reciprocated. I'm there. I'm in the front row. I'm the cheerleader. I'm buying stuff from your kids. I am, at whatever event you have, and if I can make it, I am there. I'm going to support you. Does it feel good to not get the same thing in return? Absolutely not. Like, it does not feel good at all. But I can't control how others do things. And that being said, I've gotten to the point where I tend to put distance between myself and the people that I see as being hindrance to my success, because I don't want their intentional or unintentional negativity to pretty much stunt the progress for either of us. Like, I don't want them to feel like they have to one up me, which essentially will stunt their growth, because we're not even in the same arena. We're not necessarily even doing the same thing. So it's not really possible for me to outshine them when, we not even doing the same thing. So I've gotten to the point where I know, that I belong here. I know that I belong in the space that I'm in and all the ones that I'll occupy in the future. I'm so proud of my accomplishments and the things that I've done in spite of what I could have been, because of all of the things that I've dealt with in my past. Like, I'm so proud of myself. And I've learned that I can't convince someone or that I belong. Like, I can't convince them that they belong. Like, I can't convince them that they're enough so that they don't feel some type of way about what I've done. Like, people have to find that within themselves. It's not my job to really make people feel something that they can't feel. Knowing that you belong is like, it's a point of confidence. Like, you have, it's like any other confidence. It has to come from within. And you have to know that you didn't get to this point by accident. Like none of this is by happenstance. That being where you are was completely orchestrated and that it was intentional and it was with purpose. You have to know that. It's like if you tell somebody you're beautiful, if they don't really feel it, then they're not going to accept it. So you can't force somebody, no matter how many times or how many ways you try to encourage somebody, if they don't feel it within themselves, it's falling on deaf ears. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, because those things are good to hear. Even if you don't really feel it, it does create some type of positive feeling within you, but it doesn't always take root. So if for things like that to take root, you have to be willing to accept it. You have to actually feel it, and you have to do the work within yourself to make sure that those positive things are falling into good soil and taking root, and then eventually growing and allowing those seeds to grow into whatever it is, whatever space that they need to grow into. You have to be okay with your success for others to have complete confidence in what it is that you bring to the table. You have to be willing to shine. Like you have to be willing to allow your light to shine no matter who's around, no matter what the space is, no matter who the people are that's in your life, that's around you. You have to be willing to shine regardless of what the circumstances, the surroundings, any of those things are. Because if you don't, then you'll miss opportunities, you'll miss moments, you'll miss time. Because a lot of times when we don't allow our lights to shine, we get in a space where we kind of get in our heads. We develop these negative feelings, but it's like, get out of that space. It's not worth it. So allow your light to shine, and shine bright. Shine like the moon among the stars. Like we all have something out here. We all have something that we can accomplish. We all have something, not that we can accomplish, that we should be accomplishing. Somebody is waiting on you to fulfill to fill your space. If you don't fill your space, then so many people are being affected. You may not necessarily realize it. You may not necessarily know it, but they're waiting on you. And so those feelings of inadequacy, do whatever it is that you need to do to know that you belong in this space. And that's where I am now. I've gotten to the point where I know that I belong in the spaces that I'm in. I know that I belong in the spaces that were created for me. I know that I belong in the spaces that God put me into. I know that I belong here. Like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. I am where I'm supposed to be, and I continue to move in that direction that I'm supposed to be going. And I can't allow other people's perception of themselves really, or of me, to guide where I'm supposed to be, because that ultimately would get me off course. That ultimately would get me to a space or a place where I'm not even supposed to be. And then that will lead to my own misery, but that's me allowing it. So if I allow somebody else's negative feelings to create misery within myself because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then what does that say about me? So although I've struggled in the past with imposter syndrome, I can say now that I'm not going to say that I've never had those thoughts again, but I can definitely say that I'm quick to check them. I'm quick to self-check and like, no, ma'am, you dope. You out here doing it. You good. If somebody don't see it, then that's not my issue. That's their issue. And unfortunately, people don't see it sometimes. Or maybe they do and they just don't want to acknowledge it. So whatever it is, like I said, allow your light to shine, be bright, and, fill up the night sky. So if you tend to suffer from imposter syndrome, understand that whatever false, glass ceiling that you're trying to reach, whatever ceiling that you're trying to reach, higher heights that you're trying to reach that you set for yourself, and you may not even know what that is, recognize your accomplishments, recognize those milestones along the way, because those things make a difference. Those things help you to keep pushing forward. Like if you have those mile markers, go back, write stuff down, write down the accomplishments that you've done so that you can go back and look at them and read them, or whatever it is, post them on a vision board or a poster board, whatever it is that you need to do to remind yourself that you've done a lot. You've come a long way. You know, sometimes we forget the accomplishments that we've had. Sometimes we forget all of the things that we have done while we're still trying to meet more goals. I had a situation where I realized I was always trying to make the next goal, that I wasn't even enjoying the moments. I wasn't even enjoying the times, the accomplishments that I did have. Like I was so busy focused on the future that the right now was passing me by. So don't be in that space. Don't allow right now to pass you by because you haven't in your mind made it. So that's all I wanted to say today. Like I want everybody to recognize that even if you haven't quote unquote made it, wherever it may be for you, you've come so far. You've come from a spot. You've started somewhere and you've moved forward. No matter if that forward is an inch or a mile, you've moved. And as long as you're moving forward, you're making progress. It's all about progress, not perfection. So hopefully you hear me and you hear my heart, and I pray and I truly hope that whatever it is, that whatever situation you may be suffering from, that you feel like you've not accomplished something, that you self-check and allow yourself to, win in your own arena. So thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate it. I will talk to you next time.